Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I had a interesting idea. I was thinking about my career path and I realized that designing sets, like sets for music videos or sets for commercials or maybe even sets for movies, is something that I would really want to do in the future. So I came up with this video idea where I would try to practice making sets by, for now, recreating sets from music videos. So from the title of this video, I guess you guys already know that for today, I will be recreating the set of Feel Special by Twice. Of course, I will not be recreating it to that scale. That set is huge, but I will try to recreate the look of it using the space that I have and the materials and resources that are available to me. For the materials, I will try to keep them as cheap and as accessible as possible so that if you guys would want to recreate the set yourselves, you could definitely do so. Anyway, that was a really long intro for this video, so let's get started. Alright, so I have my laptop right here, and the first thing that I did for this project was to actually make a 3D model of the set. Obviously, ang laki nung set nung Twice and I needed to scale it down into a doable project. That's why I made this file. So there are obviously a lot of benefits to having a 3D model of your project. First of all, I am not going into this project blind. If I didn't have this, I would be making the project not knowing how the end result would look like. Obviously, with this, I already know how it's gonna look like or how it's supposed to look like. Also, because I have this, I have a general idea of how much of the materials I will be needing, how much of the illustration board I will be needing, and how much of the glitter foam I will be needing. And lastly, because I have this, I have the exact dimensions of all of the parts of this set. So all I have to do is plot it out onto the materials, cut them up, and then assemble it. Obviously, this plan of mine is easier said than done, but I think that this first step is essential to giving this project a fair shot at being successful.
So I divided the set into two. First was the gold glittered panels, and second was the huge ass chandelier. So for this set, I decided to make 3 identical gold glittered panels, each of which had 2 parts, the top and the bottom. The top is 780 millimeters in height and 800 millimeters in width, and the bottom is 620 millimeters in height and 800 millimeters in width. So the top is slightly longer than the bottom. Also, the top has an extra arch piece in the middle, while the bottom does not. These dimensions, by the way, are based off of the dimensions of my rack, which was where I was going to mount my panels. So first you will be needing illustration boards. Honestly, the bigger the illustration board, the better. It will save you a ton of time later on. You will also be needing glittered foam in gold. This will give the set that Feel Special look. Then you will be needing some tape. Here I'm showing you guys all the kinds of tape I have, but any kind of tape that you have lying around will do. For cutting, you will be needing some scissors or a cutter, preferably one that still has blades unlike mine. A ruler, preferably a metal one, so that when you're cutting just the material and not the ruler itself, which can happen with plastic or rubber ones. And a cutting mat, preferably one that isn't as dirty as mine. Measuring tape is optional but very useful. This will come in handy when you're measuring spans that are longer than your ruler. And finally, you will be needing some nylon cable ties, but this will actually depend on whether you will be propping up your set the same way that I will be. Otherwise, this is completely optional. So because what I had were a ton of 1/4 illustration boards, the first step for me in making the top part of the panel was taping 4 of the boards together into one large one. I did this to end up with a board large enough for what I was going to draw. As I've mentioned, if you are recreating this project, it would be better if you are able to get a hold of just one large illustration board instead of 4 small ones, because then you would be able to skip this step altogether. After, I just moved on to sketching out the top part of the panel onto the board. I just took the dimensions I had from the SketchUp file, marked them out onto the board, and with my ruler or makeshift compass, I drew them out. If you are recreating this project, for the dimensions, refer to the SketchUp or PDF file that you can download in the description box down below. Don't worry kids, it's completely free. This video wouldn't be helpful if the files weren't accessible to everyone. I'm not that kind of YouTuber who makes videos that aren't useful unless you pay for a digital download that costs like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Well, not yet at least. Stay tuned to when I finally give into capitalism. And now for Nicole's super fancy tutorial on how to make a huge ass makeshift compass. So first, I took a spare piece of thick paper. Then on one end, I poked a hole through the paper using my pencil. From that hole, I measured out 240 millimeters, which was the radius of the inner arc that I was drawing. On this mark, I poked another hole. Lots of poking in this tutorial. So then I measured out where the center of the arc was on the board, then I marked that spot. I placed the first hole right on top of the marked spot, then using a pencil, I held the paper in place. This acted like a pivot for the compass. Then with another pencil pierced through the second hole, I simply drew out the arc. Do this again for the outer arc of the top part of the panel, as well as for the arcs of the extra arch piece in the middle. Just adjust the distance of the second hole from the first hole according to the radius of the arc you're drawing. Once everything has been drawn out, the board should look like this. After, I just cut along the lines that I just drew. For the straight lines, I used my metal ruler and cutter to make sure the lines were straight. For the curved lines, however, I just cut them freehand. I wish I had a ton of useful tips on how to cut curves to make sure they'd come out clean and crisp, but I don't have too many. I guess it helps if you have years of practice from an architecture degree that forced you to freehand a lot of shit as you cried alone at 3 a.m. wondering if you're going to get the scale model done on time. But if you were fortunately spared from that trauma, but consequently now lack a bit of skill in the freehand cutting department, it helps to just cut slowly, lightly, over and over, and with a sharp cutter. Now on to giving the boards that feel special look. So first, I laid down the gold glitter foam, glitter side facing down. Then I placed the board on top, white side facing down. It actually shouldn't matter which face of the board is facing down if you're sure you drew and cut the boards perfectly and symmetrically. I'm damn sure I didn't, so it was important for me to make sure that it was the white side facing down to make sure that the glitter foam actually matched the board. So basically, I used the board as a stencil to draw onto the back of the glitter foam. After, I just cut the foam along the lines I drew. One roll of glitter foam wasn't large enough to cover the entire top part of the panel, so I did this in sections. Like I said, there is a lot of poking in this tutorial. So to install the zip ties, I just pierced holes into the board, then threaded the zip ties through. Have at least 3 zip ties on top to make sure that the combined weight of the board and foam is supported. Where the holes should be exactly actually depends on the width of your rack or what you're mounting your board and foam onto, so this part is up to you guys. Just make sure that you have enough zip ties to keep the board and foam secure. Then I just stuck double-sided tape onto the back side of the gold glittered foam, then stuck the foam in place on top of the board. So, in front is the glitter side of the foam, and at the back is the black side of the board. I installed the zip ties before taping the glittered foam onto the board to keep the holes and zip ties and other secrets hidden underneath the glittered foam.
But anyways, apparently whoever made this.
After this, I just installed the panel onto the rack. Using the already installed zip ties, I just secured the panel in place. For the bottom part of the panel, the entire procedure was the same. Again, the only difference between the top and bottom part of the panel is that the top is slightly longer than the bottom and it has an extra arch piece in the middle. Repeat the process for both the top and bottom parts 2 more times to create a total of 3 complete panels. This is much easier said than done because, to be honest, I ended up doing these panels for 4 whole days. So if you are crazy like me and you are recreating this project, have fun is all I can say. For the chandelier, you will be needing wires. This is to create the skeleton of the chandelier. For cutting the wires, you will be needing some pliers, and for measuring the wires, you will also be needing some measuring tape. To give the chandelier some light, you will be needing some fairy lights. It would be better if you are able to get a hold of fairy lights that have clear wires and a warm white light. Sadly, mine were a cool white, but it's okay. Anyway, to install the fairy lights to the skeleton, you will be needing some zip ties, and finally, you will also be needing some gold glittered foam. So I was making just the front half of the chandelier, and for this, I needed to make 2 semicircles. So first, I took a piece of wire that was 36 inches long. I bent the wire at the 3-inch, 8.5-inch, 14-inch, 23.5-inch, and 33-inch mark. At each bend, I made a small loop with my pliers. The loops will make it easier to connect the different wire pieces later on. After, I just closed the semicircle by twisting the extra 3 inches on each end onto the semicircle itself. After this, I made another semicircle similar to this one, but smaller. This time, the wire was 26 inches long, and I made loops at the 3-inch, 6.5-inch, 10-inch, 16.5-inch, and 23-inch mark. I then took another piece of wire, but this time, it was 15 inches long. I bent the ends inward to the center at the 2-inch and 13-inch mark. I made 4 of these to serve as the connectors for the 2 semicircles. Then, I just connected the different wire pieces to each other. I propped up the small semicircle, and with the 4 connectors, I connected the larger semicircle at the bottom. Using the connectors, I just hooked each loop of the smaller semicircle to its respective loop on the bigger semicircle. Then, I just threaded the fairy lights up and down from one side to the other, using the zip ties to secure the lights in place. I secured the fairy lights going down on one side, made a U at the bottom, then secured the fairy lights going up to the other side. I did this over and over and over and over until I ended up with something like this. Okay, I know that this isn't the fanciest looking chandelier, but this is the best that I could come up with. Anyway, after I just used strips of the gold glittered foam from the panels earlier to cover the two semicircles and try to make it look a little bit more like a chandelier.
Alright guys, so after days and days and days, I think weeks and weeks of doing this set, we are finally done. It took way longer than I expected simply because I underestimated the scale of this project. It turned out to be a pretty big project just for myself. Also, I didn't have a lot of the materials and I did have to wait for some of the materials to arrive so that I can finally finish it. But we're here, we're finally done, and I am super excited because I really love how it turned out. I'm looking over here because this is where the set is, but I love it. If you guys are recreating this, I hope it turned out good as well. Anyway, so we are here. We are finally going to start working on the outfits. So because it took a really long time to finish the set and because I'm a crazy person, I decided to make it harder on myself by recreating not one, but two outfits from the music video. So I have these fabrics for the outfits. I actually just ordered these from Shopee. I will link them down below if you guys would like to order these as well. So I will be recreating one outfit for myself and I will be recreating another outfit for my sister Maxine because why not? So the outfit that I picked is the white Nyan outfit from the music video. I just really love this outfit, and also it looks very similar to an outfit that Elsa Hosk, am I pronouncing that right? That Elsa Hosk was wearing to an event. I realized that they look very similar, so by recreating this outfit, I'm kind of hitting two birds with one stone. I have a Nyan outfit and then I have an Elsa Hosk outfit, and my sister Maxine picked the Nyan lavender outfit from the music video. So I'm really excited to recreate these outfits, but quick little disclaimer, I am not a professional fashion designer. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I thought it would be fun to recreate these outfits and to show you guys how I do it.
For the outfits, you will be needing white and lavender satin fabrics, and for each top and each skirt, you will be needing a zipper. I used white and purple zippers to match the fabric that I was working with. For sewing, of course, you will be needing a sewing machine, or if you don't have a machine, basic sewing materials like needles, pins, and thread will do. For cutting the fabrics, you will be needing scissors. And finally, for the white outfit specifically, you will also be needing garter for the puffies on the gloves. So first, I took a skirt that perfectly fit Maxine to serve as my guide in making the skirt. I then laid it on top of the lavender fabric with the shiny side facing out. Around the skirt, I measured and marked out about 3 inches. I usually just allot about 2 inches for seam allowance, but I realized that this pink skirt is actually made of a stretchier fabric than the lavender fabric that I was working with. So I allotted in an extra inch to give Maxine's butt some wiggle room. Then I just cut along the lines that I drew. After, I folded the fabric and just made sure that it was symmetrical. This actually makes the front piece of the skirt. Then, I laid the said front piece, still folded, on top of some more fabric, then traced the folded front piece onto it. In tracing, I did, however, add an extra inch along the center fold. This was to make sure that there was enough fabric for folding and sewing the zipper onto. Then, again, I just cut along the lines that I drew. I then flipped the front piece over and did the same thing. These two are the back pieces of the skirt. I then assembled and pinned the different pieces in place with the shiny faces kissing. Here you can see that I folded out the extra inch that I added to the back pieces along the center fold of the skirt. Then, I placed the pink skirt on top again, and this time, I was ready to commit to something permanent. Well, kinda. So, from the edge of the pink skirt, I measured out 2 inches and put in pins to serve as markers. Then, I just sewed along the pins. My overcompensation earlier ended up doing me a favor because when Maxine tried on the skirt, it ended up fitting just right on her, even though I added a few extra inches along the edges. So, I do recommend trying on your work as you go, especially if the stretchiness of the fabrics you're working with are different, and especially if you have no freaking clue what you're doing like me. For the waistband, I took a piece of fabric, then folded it in half. To keep the fabric flat, I used an iron. Then, I opened the fabric up, measured out 1.5 inches from the fold, then folded the edges into that fold. I did this for both sides. After lots of folding and ironing, I folded the fabric back up with the raw edges tucked in inside. Before sewing the waistband into the skirt, I sewed in some darts. I had Maxine fit the skirt and sewed in the darts based on how much more the skirt needed to be cinched in around the waist. Then I just took the top part of the skirt, sandwiched it into the waistband, and pinned and sewed everything in place. This part is actually easier said than done. It actually takes a bit of time, but don't stress about it too much. The waistband doesn't have to be perfect because it will just get folded into the skirt later on. Because again, I wasn't ready to commit and permanently cut up the skirt because I could potentially make it too short and fuck it up, I moved on to folding the edges of where the zipper will go on first. I had Maxine fit the skirt again to make sure that 1, I was leaving just enough fabric for folding to have a clean hem, and 2, that I was taking in just enough fabric to make sure that when the zipper was installed, the skirt still actually fit her. After the fitting, I just folded the edges of the back pieces twice for a clean hem, then pinned them in place. Then, again, I had Maxine fit the skirt. This time to figure out the appropriate length, to commit to it, and to finally cut it. We just marked the length that we wanted with a pin, and to that length, I added more than 1.5 inches for hem allowance. Then, I just cut the bottom of the skirt, and like with the other edges, I folded it twice for a clean hem. Then, I just got to pinning and sewing. The hem is 1.5 inches in width, which is also the width of the waistband. Details, this doesn't freaking matter. You guys don't have to be strict about this because like the waistband, this won't even get seen, but I was just really proud of how consistent the widths were and how clean the sewing was, and I guess I just wanted you guys to know that. Now, back to the zipper, okay? As you guys can tell by the order of how I did this skirt, I did not know what I was doing and I might have some commitment issues. Anyway, so first I sewed the bottom of the back pieces of the skirt together. This is where the zipper will end. Then, I just pinned and sewed each side of the zipper to its respective side on the skirt. It looked like this in front and like this at the back. After the zipper was installed, I zipped it up and down because it was oddly very satisfying, and to show you guys again that I did a pretty okay job at sewing this time. Not too shabby for a mediocre 23-year-old doing random fashion / set design related videos on YouTube, if I do say so myself. For the ribbons, first I folded a piece of fabric with the wrong side facing out. On the wrong side, I just sketched out a rectangle with tapering sides. This was about 2 inches in width and 14 inches long. Then, I just sewed along the lines that I drew, but left a small hole on one side so that I can flip this ribbon inside out. After, I just sewed up the hole, folded the center, and sewed these to the side of the skirt. I made 4 ribbons for the skirt and 1 ribbon for the top. After sewing the ribbons to the side of the skirt, the finished skirt should look like this. For the tube, first I folded a piece of fabric with the wrong side facing out. From the fold, I measured down about 8 inches, which would be the length of the top. I made sure to have at least an extra inch for seam allowance. These measurements depend on your body, so just adjust accordingly. So then, I stuck pins in along the 8-inch line to serve as a marker, then I just sewed along that line. I then flipped the tube inside out, ironed it down to make it easier to work with, then had Maxine try it on. I wrapped the tube around her, then stuck a few pins in to mark where the tube met itself. I folded the tube to where the pins were and ironed it down to make it easier to work with. After, I added about 2 inches on each side of the tube for, you guessed it, hem allowance. And again, like with the other edges, I just folded the edge twice for a clean hem. After, cut off the excess fabric. Here, I wasn't ready to commit again, so I didn't cut off the excess fabric just yet, but I will later on. For the zipper, similar to the skirt, I just pinned and sewed each side of the zipper to its respective side on the skirt. So, for this top, I needed straps for the tube itself and for the ruching in front. So, on a piece of folded fabric with the wrong side facing out, I just measured and marked out about just under half an inch from the fold, then sewed along that line. Then, I just flipped it inside out to make these straps. I recommend making these as long as possible so that you have a lot of extra to work with. Along the center fold, I first cut a hole at the bottom of the tube that was wide enough to fit the 2 straps. Then, I just inserted the 2 straps into the hole. Like I said, I didn't really know what I was doing. It would have been easier to do this before installing the zipper so that I didn't have to feel up the tube to make sure that the straps were erect inside. Well, that sounded weird. Anyway, after I just measured out about half an inch from the center fold, sticking pins in to serve as a marker. In pinning, I made sure to not thread through the straps because I wanted the straps to be able to wiggle around the inside of the tube. Then, I just got to sewing. For the ribbon on the top, I already had the ribbon I made earlier, but I knotted it into itself first before sewing it onto the top. After sewing the ribbons and straps onto the top, the finished top should look like this. To complete the outfit, I actually also made a matching headband made from the same fabric I used to make the top and skirt. So Nayan's outfit looked like it was a dress, but I decided to make a skirt and a tube top instead because in my head, it was a little bit easier to do. So the process of making the lavender skirt is the same for making this white one. But of course, I used a skirt that fit me perfectly and I adjusted the measurements to fit my body. The process of making the lavender tube top is the same for making this white one as well. I measured myself out to figure out the basic dimensions that I needed. Then again, I just folded a piece of fabric with the wrong side facing out. From the fold, I measured down about 8 inches, which would be the length of the top, but I made sure to have at least an extra inch for seam allowance. Then, I stuck pins in, then got to sewing. So for this top, there are no ribbons, ruching, nor are there straps. So it's a pretty basic tube top, so it ended up being faster to finish. I did, however, need to sew in some darts to make sure it fit me better. Like with the lavender tube top, I then used pins to mark where the tube met itself. After, I added about 2 inches on each side of the tube for hem allowance. Like with the other edges, I've said this so many freaking times in this video, I'm so sorry, but again, I folded the edge twice for a clean hem. After, I just installed the zipper like I did for all the other pieces and voila! The top is done. For the puff on top of the gloves, I just took a piece of the same white fabric, folded it, laid it out with the shiny faces kissing, and pinned a trapezoidal shape onto the fabric that was 7 inches long on top, 10 inches long at the bottom, and 10 inches tall. Then I sewed the sides, leaving the top and bottom open. Then I cut the excess fabric and sewed in thin garter at the top and bottom. The length of each garter was just right to be able to wrap around my arm. After, it should look like this, like shiny, puffy clouds. I already had white long gloves at home. I got these a year ago for my eventually fail creative shot for graduation. Anyway, if you guys don't have white princess gloves randomly lying around your house, you can buy these at your local store for a pretty cheap price.